The months that followed brought gentle changes to both Alina and the ranch. Every day began with soft morning light entering the windows, warming the wooden floors and filling the rooms with quiet hope. Elena's strength continued to grow little by little. She could now walk short distances without support, though she moved carefully and still held nearby furniture when she needed. Each step felt like a tiny victory, a reminder that she was moving forward, not backward. Jonas watched her progress with quiet pride. He never rushed her or asked her to do more than she could. Instead, he remained close enough to help, but far enough to let her prove her strength. The bond between them grew deeper in these small moments of support, gratitude and trust. Alina also became more confident with managing ranch tasks she could handle from inside. She wrote letters, recorded accounts, planned orders, and even contacted nearby markets to ask about opportunities. Her handwriting filled pages with neat lines, and her careful planning helped bring more income. Jonas's ranch, once heavy with worry, began to breathe again. But even as life moved toward peace, the outside world had not forgotten Elena's past. Word spread through town about how Jonas had stepped forward for her that night. Most people admired it quietly. Some found it inspiring. But others, especially those connected to the Marquez family, felt uneasy. They didn't want stories circulating that made them look careless or unkind. One afternoon, as Jonas was repairing a fence, a horse-drawn carriage appeared on the road leading to the ranch. Alina, who was sitting on the porch, recognized the style of the carriage instantly. Her heart tightened. It belonged to the Marquez family. She straightened her posture and drew a slow breath. She had expected that they might come someday, not because they missed her, but because they feared how people talked as the carriage stopped near the porch. Mrs. Marquez and her older daughter stepped out. Their clothes looked polished, their posture stiff, as if they were trying to protect their dignity from the dust of the ranch. Alina stayed seated, but folded her hands calmly on her lap. Prepared to meet them without fear, Mrs. Marquez forced a polite smile. "Alina," she said, "you look..." "Well," Alina nodded politely. "I am well." Jonas walked up from the field when he saw the carriage. He stood beside Alina, wiping his hands on a cloth. His presence gave her comfort, like a steady wall she could lean on. "We came to check on you," Mrs. Marquez said, glancing around the porch. "We heard you married." Quite surprising news. Alina looked straight into her former employer's eyes, something she had rarely been able to do before. "It was unexpected," she said honestly, "but it has been a good change." The younger Miss Marquez stepped forward. "People in town are making strange assumptions. They say, we treated you badly." "That isn't fair." Elena's heart felt a small sting, not of fear, but of old memories. "People say what they see," she replied softly. "I went through difficult times, but I don't wish harm on anyone." Mrs. Marquez exchanged a quick look with her daughter. They seemed unsettled by Elena's calm tone, maybe even surprised that she now spoke with confidence. "We would like you to return," Mrs. Marquez said finally. "Not to work, of course, just to stay with us. It might help stop these rumors. A woman in your condition, well, life on a ranch must be challenging." Jonas remained silent, allowing Alina to speak for herself. He trusted her voice. Alina took a gentle breath, letting the moment settle. Inside, she felt a quiet strength rising, something she hadn't known she possessed months ago. "I thank you for coming," she said, "but I have a home now. This is where I want to stay." The younger Miss Marquez frowned. "But you barely know this man." "You can't truly believe," Alina lifted her hand slightly, asking for silence in a polite way she had never dared before. "I know that I am treated with respect here," she said. "I know that I am safe. And I know that my life belongs to me now. I choose to stay with my husband." A soft breeze moved across the porch, lifting loose strands of her hair. Her words rested in the air with quiet certainty. Jonas felt a warm swell in his chest. He wasn't just proud, he was moved. Alina had spoken not from fear or pressure, but from her own heart. Mrs. Marquez tightened her gloves. "If that is your choice, then we won't insist. We simply wanted clarity." "You have it," Alina replied gently. Without another word, the two women returned to their carriage. As they left, Alina let out a soft breath she had been holding. Jonas placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You handled that well," he said softly. Alina looked up at him with a gentle smile. "I didn't know I could speak like that. You've grown stronger," Jonas replied. Inside and out, Alina felt warmth in his words. She knew the strength she found wasn't only from her own effort. It also came from feeling safe, supported, and valued. That evening, the town quietly learned that Alina had spoken boldly for her own choice. And the more people heard about her growth, the more their respect grew for both her and Jonas. Rumors slowly shifted into admiration. People began seeing the truth. Their marriage wasn't a joke or a strange. Accidented had become something steady and meaningful as winter approached. Jonas and Alina prepared the ranch for cold nights. Jonas stacked wood beside the house and checked the barns. Alina organized their supplies and created lists for everything they might need. They worked side by side, each contributing what they could. One crisp morning, Jonas returned from town carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Alina looked at him curiously. "What's that?" She asked. Jonas smiled shyly, something he rarely did. "You'll see." He placed the bundle on the table and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a delicate set of hairpins, shaped like tiny leaves, shining softly in the light. Alina gasped quietly. "They're beautiful. Saw them in the shop," Jonas said. "And I thought, maybe you'd like something nice for yourself. Something just because." Alina felt tears warming her eyes. Not sad tears, but gentle ones. No one had given her a gift like that in years. She lifted one of the hairpins and traced its smooth surface. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more than you know." Jonas shrugged lightly, embarrassed by the depth of her emotion. "You deserve something special." Alina looked at him, her heart full. She wasn't sure when her feelings had begun to change, when gratitude had slowly turned into affection into something deeper. But now, looking at Jonas, she felt it clearly. She cared for him not because he rescued her, but because he had always shown her steady kindness. Winter passed quietly. Spring arrived with soft rains and green fields. By then, Alina could walk outside with a cane Jonas had carved for her. She loved touching the smooth wood, knowing Jonas had made it carefully, shaping it with patience and thought. One warm morning, Jonas suggested something unexpected. "I think we should have a small ceremony," he said. "A real one. Not the rushed one we had that night." Alina blinked in surprise. "You mean a wedding ceremony?" Jonas nodded. "Only a few people. The pastor, Mrs. Rojas, maybe a neighbor or two. I just want us to stand together and choose each other properly." Alina felt her breath catch. "I would like that," she said softly. "Very much." The ceremony took place under a large oak tree near the edge of the ranch. Its branches stretched wide, offering shade and comfort. The sun shone gently, and the breeze carried the sound of singing birds. Mrs. Rojas placed wildflowers on a small table, and the pastor prepared simple words of blessing. Alina wore a white shawl that she had embroidered herself. Jonas wore his cleanest shirt, looking both nervous and proud. When they stood facing each other, something warm and steady filled the space between them. The pastor spoke of trust, respect, and partnership values they had already learned through experience. When Jonas took Alina's hands, he held them gently but firmly, as if promising to never let them go. "I choose you," Jonas said quietly. "Not because of what happened, but because of who you are." Alina felt tears in her eyes, but they were soft and joyful. "I choose you too," she whispered, "because you saw me when no one else did." When they finished the ceremony, the small group clapped warmly. Mrs. Rojas hugged them both. Even the birds seemed to sing louder that evening. Jonas and Alina stood on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. The sky glowed golden and pink, spreading warmth across the land they now shared. Alina leaned gently against Jonas's shoulder. "We've come so far," she said softly. Jonas nodded. "And we'll keep going. Together." They watched the last light fade, feeling peace settle around them like a soft blanket. Their life had begun in an unexpected, difficult moment, but it grew into something beautiful, something chosen. not forced, and as the stars appeared above them, Jonas and Alina knew one thing for certain: whatever came next, they would face it side by side, with steady hearts and a home filled with kindness. Clara stood in the warm entryway, her breath still coming out in uneven clouds. Even though she was inside, the cold held onto her like invisible hands. Her fingers tingled sharply, a painful reminder of just how chilled she had become. Her clothes felt heavy on her body, soaked through and clinging to her skin. The air in the room was warm, but she couldn't feel most of it yet. Her shivering grew stronger, almost rhythmic. As if her body was trying to restart itself, the rancher returned only moments later, carrying a stack of thick flannel clothing and 2 more wool blankets over his arm. His steps were quick, but controlled, and his face held the same serious look he had when he first opened the door. He wasn't panicked, but something inside him was tight. Clara could see it in the way he held his jaw, in the way he kept glancing at her with concern. He set the clothes and blankets carefully on a small wooden bench near her. "These should fit well enough," he said gently. "They're clean and warm. You need to change as soon as you can." Clara nodded, but her fingers were stiff and numb. She tried to unbutton her coat, but her hands shook too much to grip the buttons. The rancher noticed right away. He didn't step toward her, but his voice softened. "Do you need help?" he asked. She hesitated, embarrassed and unsure. I can try." But when she tried again, her hands felt even heavier, almost like they belonged to someone else. Her shivers grew so strong that she had to plant her feet wider to keep steady. She knew she should answer him, but the words caught in her throat. She felt trapped inside her own cold. The rancher kept his distance, but watched her closely. He wasn't impatient. He simply understood the danger she was in. He took a quiet breath before saying, "Listen, I know it feels uncomfortable having someone tell you what to do, but I've seen people get worse fast. I don't want that to happen to you." His honesty calmed her. He wasn't pushing her out of discomfort. He was pulling her away from danger. She nodded again, this time more clearly. "I think I might need help." He approached slowly, like someone approaching a nervous animal, careful to show he meant no harm. "Only enough to get you out of the wet layers," he explained. "You'll handle the rest." She appreciated the way he said it, kind, respectful, and reassuring. As he helped unbutton her coat, his hands were steady at first. Then she noticed a faint tremor passing through them. He tried to hide it, but it was there. She wondered why. Was he cold too? Or was something else affecting him? When her coat finally slipped off her shoulders, she let out a small gasp. The air around her felt warm, but her body was too cold to recognize it. The rancher stepped back immediately to give her space. He nodded toward the flannel clothes he'd brought. "I'll be right outside this door," he said, backing away into the hallway. "Call me if you need anything." Clara appreciated his thoughtfulness. He closed the door behind him, leaving her alone in the room. She started removing the rest of her wet clothes, her hands clumsy at first, but gradually responding. Every time she moved, cold steam rose from the damp fabric. Her skin prickled painfully as warm air touched it. She felt shaky, slightly dizzy, but she kept going. Once she changed into the dry flannel shirt and pants, both of which felt much too big, but wonderfully warm, she wrapped herself in the heavy blankets he had left for her. The weight of them made her feel secure, like someone was holding her steady. When she opened the door, the rancher was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He straightened immediately, his eyes scanning her for signs of improvement. "That's better," he said softly. "Come sit by the fire." He led her to a cozy living room where a large stone fireplace glowed with orange flames. The warmth felt like a gift. Clara sank onto the couch closest to the fire, pulling the blankets tighter around herself. The heat soothed her at first, but then her shivers suddenly grew intense. Her teeth chattered hard enough to hurt. The rancher noticed and took a step closer, worry flickering across his face. "That's normal," he said quietly. "When someone has been in the cold too long, they shiver more as their body tries to warm up again. It's a good sign. But it means you were colder than I thought." Clara tried to answer, but her voice was shaky. "I feel strange. Like I'm here, but also not really here." He nodded. That's the cold talking. You're still coming back from it. Just keep warming up slowly. He knelt by the fireplace and added more wood. Flames rose higher, filling the room with a gentle crackling sound. Clara stared into the firelight, trying to focus on the warmth spreading across her skin. Her toes tingled painfully, and she winced. The rancher noticed. Your circulation is returning, he explained. It stings at first. She took a long, trembling breath. Thank you, she managed to say. For everything. You don't need to thank me, he replied. You showed up here in weather nobody should be out in. You did the right thing coming to the door. Clara watched him as he sat down across from her. He looked calm, but there was something heavy behind his eyes. Something that didn't match the peaceful crackling of the fire. She wondered again about the slight shake she had seen earlier in his hands. You were shaking before, she said quietly. When you helped me? His expression changed very slightly, but she saw it. A flicker of emotion, then a breath he held too long. He didn't answer right away. The fire popped softly between them. Finally, he said, I wasn't shaking because of the cold. His voice was low, almost careful. I've been through something like this before. Someone I cared about got too cold. I reacted too slowly, and I lost them. Clara's heart tightened. She didn't know him well, but she could feel the weight of his words, the memory he carried. It's the guilt that must have lived with him for years. I'm sorry, she said gently. That must have been very hard. He didn't nod or shake his head. He just stared into the fire for a moment. It was, he said simply, and when I saw you shaking, wearing wet clothes, some of those memories came rushing back. Clara lifted the blanket to cover more of her arms. But you helped me right away. I learned from what happened before, he replied, his eyes warm but sad. I won't ever make that mistake again. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, but also peaceful. Like they both understood there were moments in life that shaped people forever. After a while, he stood up. I'll make you something warm to drink. It'll help. Clara nodded gratefully. She watched him walk into the kitchen, noticing that his steps were steadier now. Maybe talking helped him. Maybe seeing her improving eased some of the old memories left alone with the fire. Clara closed her eyes for a moment. The warmth felt like it was finally sinking in, reaching deeper than before. Her shivering softened a little, though it didn't stop completely. She wrapped herself tighter in the blankets and listened to the gentle sounds from the kitchen, the soft clang of a pot. Running water, the rancher moving with quiet purpose. She realized she felt safe, really safe. The stranger who had startled her earlier with his urgent demand had turned out to be someone who cared more than most people she knew. She felt grateful and also curious. Who was he? Why did he live alone out here? What other stories were hidden behind those calm eyes? When he returned with a steaming mug, he handed it to her with both hands to keep it steady. She accepted it, the warmth of the cup soothing her palms. Drink slowly, he said. It'll help your body warm from the inside. She took a careful sip. The drink was mild, sweet, and comforting. She sighed softly. This is wonderful. He smiled, not a big smile, but a real one. And in that moment, the storm outside, the cold she had escaped, and even the fear she had felt seemed far away. She felt grounded again, anchored by the warmth of the fire and the unexpected kindness of a man she'd met only an hour ago. As she sipped slowly, she wondered how a simple knock on a stranger's door could change the course of an entire night, maybe even more than a night. Something about this place, this person, felt like the beginning of a story she hadn't expected to live. The winter sky over the Wyoming Valley looked heavy, almost bruised, as if it carried a weight it could barely hold. Clouds rolled low, stretching like dark blankets across the mountains. The air felt still, too still, the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm breaks loose. Clara Jennings could feel it even inside her car. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she peered through the fogged windshield. She had traveled across many remote places for her wildlife photography work. But this valley felt different, wild, wide, and full of quiet warnings. The wind picked up, pushing flakes of snow across the road in thin, fast lines. Her car tires slipped once, then again, and her heartbeat jumped both times. She glanced at the GPS, but the screen had frozen on the same image for the past 15 minutes. Her signal was gone. She whispered to herself, just a little farther. There's got to be a ranch or a house nearby. But her voice didn't carry much confidence. The temperature outside kept dropping. Frost crawled across the glass. Clara turned the heat up, but the vents blew nothing more than a weak breath of lukewarm air. Something in the engine groaned in response. A soft, unhappy sound that made her gut twist. She had ignored earlier signs, slower response, a strange rattle. A blinking warning light because she was sure she could make it. She always made it. She had survived thunderstorms in the Amazon, sandstorms in Morocco, and nights sleeping under thin tents in cold forests. She told herself this was nothing compared to those moments. But somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not one of those situations she could simply tough out. The snow thickened until the world outside. Her window looked like a white curtain. A sudden gust pushed the car sideways, and Clara let out a sharp breath. She slowed to a crawl, her headlights illuminating nothing but the swirling snowfall. When the engine sputtered, coughed, and then died completely, the sudden silence felt louder than the storm. Clara stared at the dashboard, willing the lights to come back on. She turned the key again once, twice, but the car refused to wake. No, please, no, she murmured, though she already knew it was useless. Cold air slipped in through the small gaps around the windows. Her breath fogged in front of her in soft white puffs. She pulled her coat tighter, but it was already damp from the earlier flurries she had walked through while taking photos. She could feel the dampness seeping deeper into the fabric, stealing warmth from her body with quiet persistence. She forced herself to sit still for a moment and think. She couldn't stay in the car. Not in this weather. Not with the engine off. Hypothermia wasn't a word she took lightly. She had seen what it did to people during her trips. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, pushed the door open against the weight of the storm. Outside, the cold struck her like a solid wall. The wind carried tiny ice crystals that stung her cheeks. She wrapped her scarf tighter and used her gloved hand to shield her face. Visibility was almost nothing, just shapes and shadows moving in the white world around her. She could only hope she was walking in the direction of anything, that would keep her alive through the storm. Her boots sank into the snow with each step. The wind howled, tugging at her clothes, pushing her sideways, making her stumble. She lifted her head only long enough to search for dark shapes that might be buildings. Minutes passed, or maybe longer time was hard to measure when every second felt the same. A part of her wanted to stop, curl into a ball, and rest. Even though she knew that would be dangerous. Just when her legs felt too heavy to lift again, she spotted a structure through the blowing snow, a large, dark shape standing stubbornly against the storm. A barn. And behind it, she could make out the edges of a house. Relief washed over her so suddenly she almost cried. She forced her body forward, step after slow step, until she reached a wooden porch covered in a thick layer of snow. She knocked once, but the wind swallowed the sound. She knocked harder, her gloved hand shaking. After a moment, she heard slow, heavy footsteps on the other side of the door. It opened a few inches, and warm air spilled out. Carrying the soft scent of wood smoke, a tall man stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the space. His face was weathered, the kind that spent more time outside than in. His dark beard was dusted with snow, and his eyes were sharp but calm, studying her with surprise and caution. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Clara tried to answer, but her teeth chattered, and her words came out broken. Car broke down. Cold. The man didn't need more explanation. He opened the door wider and stepped aside, motioning her in. Clara stumbled into the warmth, nearly falling before catching herself. The heat of the room hit her all at once, making her chest tighten. Her body, still cold and wet, reacted with trembling shivers that shook her. From head to toe, the man closed the door behind her and turned to look at her again. His eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion but with understanding. He had seen this kind of shaking before. "You're freezing," he said. His tone was calm but carried urgency beneath it. "Your clothes are wet. You need to get out of them before your body gets colder. Clara blinked at him, unsure she heard correctly. The words echoed strangely in her mind. What? He stepped closer, not threatening, just firm. You're soaked through. You'll get worse if you stay in those clothes. Hypothermia sets in faster than people think. He reached for a thick wool blanket from a nearby chair and held it out to her. His voice remained steady, but there was a note of insistence she couldn't ignore. Take off your clothes now, he said. I'll get you dry ones and more blankets. Clara's heart jumped. The request felt startling because of how suddenly it came, but there was no unkindness or wrong intention in his expression. Only worry. Real worry. His jaw was tight, his hands slightly tense, and his eyes stayed focused on her face, not her body. She realized then that he wasn't being rude. He was trying to keep her alive. Still shaking, she nodded slowly. She opened her mouth to say something, maybe to explain she understood, but her voice didn't work. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She felt the cold in her bones now, deeper than she liked. The man noticed her growing unsteadiness. His own hands began to tremble slightly, not from cold, but from fear or memory she didn't understand yet. He took a step back, giving her space, then said with a strained calmness, I'll bring you dry clothes. Warm ones. A fire is going in the next room. He walked out quickly, almost too quickly, as if he needed distance to steady himself. Clara watched him go, confused by the slight shake in his hands, the tightness in his shoulders. She didn't know what had shaken him, maybe a memory, maybe something he'd lost before. But she would learn later that his reaction came from something deeper, something that still haunted him whenever he saw someone in danger. For now, all she could do was focus on staying awake, staying aware, and trusting that this stranger, the rugged rancher with the steady voice and shaking hands, was her best chance at making it. Clara slept deeply through the first hours of the storm. Held by the steady warmth of the fire and the thick blankets wrapped around her, the world outside continued to roar, but inside the ranch house, everything felt calm, almost peaceful. The soft crackle of burning wood and the quiet hum of lantern light made the room feel safe, like a shelter built exactly for nights like this. Elias stayed awake longer than he planned. He sat in the wooden chair beside the couch, elbows resting on his knees, watching the fire as if it were a guardian. Every now and then he glanced at Clara, checking her breathing, making sure she was warm enough. He added wood to the fire when the flames dipped, moving quietly so he wouldn't disturb her rest. Hours passed slowly. Eventually, when he was certain she was stable and warm, Elias leaned back in the chair. His eyes grew heavy. The fire was steady, Clara was comfortable, and the room glowed softly with golden light. His eyelids drifted closed, and he fell into a light sleep. Morning arrived gently, not with sunlight, but with a soft gray glow filtering through the frosted windows. The storm had stopped, leaving a heavy blanket of snow covering everything outside. The world felt hushed, like the storm had taken all sound with it when it left. Clara stirred first. She blinked at the ceiling at the wooden beams above her, trying to remember where she was. When her eyes shifted, and she saw Elias asleep in the chair nearby, everything came back. The storm, the cold, the ranch house, the warmth of the fire. She watched him for a moment. In sleep, Elias looked younger and less burdened. His face relaxed. The worry lines she had noticed the night before had softened. His hands, which had trembled when he helped her, rested quietly on his lap. Clara sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. Her body felt different, lighter, warmer, stronger. The deep ache of cold was gone, replaced by a gentle tiredness. Her hands didn't shake anymore. Her breathing felt steady when she moved to adjust the blanket. The soft rustle woke Elias. His eyes opened, and for a moment he looked confused, as if he wasn't sure what time it was or if the storm had passed. Then he saw Clara sitting up, awake and alert, and his expression shifted completely. "You're awake," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "How do you feel?" Clara smiled. "Better. Much better, actually." Elias sat up straighter, relief clear in his eyes. "Good. You slept for a while. I think your body needed that. Clara looked around the room. The fire was still burning, though lower than before. The lantern on the table flickered softly. Everything felt warm and comforting. Did you sleep at all? She asked gently. A little, he said, giving a small shrug. Enough. Clara gave him a knowing look. You didn't need to stay up the whole night watching the fire. He smiled, just barely. Maybe not. But I wanted to be sure you were okay. Something warm spread in Clara's chest. She didn't know what to say, so she simply smiled back. Elias stood and stretched his back, then headed toward the kitchen. You should eat something, he said. A warm breakfast will help your body recover faster. Clara watched him move around the kitchen with quiet efficiency. He cracked eggs, sliced bread, placed a pot of water on the stove for tea. The simple act of watching him cook felt strangely comforting. There was something steady about Elia, something calm that settled her nerves in a way she hadn't expected. While he worked, Clara walked to the window. Snow covered everything in smooth waves. Trees stood tall under heavy white branches. The sky was pale, almost silver. The storm had left the world looking untouched. It's like a painting. It's beautiful out there, she said quietly. Elias turned slightly toward her. It is, but it's also dangerous today. The roads will be blocked for a while. The rescue team might take time to get here. Clara nodded. I guess I'm not going anywhere yet. You're safe here, he replied. We'll wait it out. When breakfast was ready, they sat across from each other at the wooden kitchen table. The warm food filled the room with a comforting smell. Clara took her first bite and felt the warmth spread through her with every mouthful. This is really good, she said with a smile. I'm glad, Elias replied. My cooking skills are simple, but reliable. Clara laughed softly. Reliable is good. After breakfast, they returned to the living room, where the fire still glowed. Clara felt more awake now, her strength returning with every passing minute. She looked at Elias, noticing he finally seemed more relaxed than the night before. She leaned back on the couch. Elias, thank you. Truly, I don't think I can fully express how grateful I am. He shook his head gently. You don't have to. Anyone would have done the same. Clara tilted her head slightly. Not everyone, she said softly. Elias looked away, his gaze drifting to the window and the snowy world beyond it. Well, he said after a moment, I'm just glad you're all right. For a while they sat in comfortable quiet, listening to the gentle sound of wind brushing against the house. Eventually, the sound of distant engines broke through the silence. Clara sat up straighter. Is that? Elias stood and walked to the window. Looks like the rescue team finally made it through the road. Clara rose from the couch and joined him. Far down the snowy path, she saw two slow-moving vehicles making their way toward the ranch. Something inside her tightened a mix of relief and unexpected sadness. I guess this is it, she said softly. Time to get back to the world? Elias looked at her, his eyes warm but carrying something unspoken. You'll be safe now. That's what matters. Clara turned fully to face him. I won't forget this place, she said. Or you. You saved my life. He opened his mouth as if to respond, then stopped. Instead, he nodded with a gentle, meaningful expression. They walked to the entryway together. Clara slipped on the warm boots Elias had lent her and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders for the walk outside. Elias opened the door for her. Cold, crisp air rushed in, but it wasn't frightening anymore. It felt fresh, clean, new. Clara stepped out onto the porch, then turned back to him. Thank you, she said again, her voice full of sincerity. Elias stood in the doorway, tall and calm, snowflakes settling on his jacket. Take care, Clara, he said. And if you ever find yourself in this valley again, you know where to find shelter. She smiled, her heart warming at his words. I won't forget. The rescue team reached her with friendly voices and warm blankets. They guided her toward their vehicle, making sure she was steady on her feet. Clara took one last look at the ranch house. Elias still stood at the door watching her leave. Their eyes met across the snowy distance. Neither spoke, but something in the moment felt complete. Like a quiet understanding passing between them as the rescue vehicle drove away. Clara kept looking back until the house disappeared behind the bend of the snowy road. She felt a strange soft longing she hadn't expected. The night she spent at the ranch had been frightening, but it had also brought something gentle and unexpected into her life. She knew she would tell the story someday. Perhaps in her photography exhibitions, or maybe in a personal journal. But there was one part she would keep close to her. The part where a quiet rancher with steady eyes and trembling hands helped her survive one of the coldest nights of her life. Snow-covered valley faded behind her, but the memory of Elias Ward and the warmth he had offered on the coldest night stayed with her like a soft, permanent mark. And somewhere back at the ranch, Elias watched the road grow quiet again, knowing he would remember her too for reasons he couldn't yet name, but would slowly understand in the days to come.